You know, the most dangerous thing Donald Trump ever confessed wasn't something he shouted at a rally. No, it was something he said calmly, almost casually, and it unlocks a whole strategy that most people just completely miss.
Think about this quote for a second. If we don't win the midterms, I'll get impeached. See, the tone, it's not panic, right? It's just a flat statement of fact. And if you can understand why he said it so calmly, you've got the key to this whole thing. Now, your first instinct, my first instinct, everyone's first instinct is to hear that and think, aha, a confession, right? He's admitting he's guilty of something, he's scared of getting caught. But that's not what's actually going on here, not even close.
This isn't about a fear of wrongdoing, it's about a fear of consequences. It's him basically admitting that the only thing that protects him isn't the law, it's power. And once you get that single distinction, his entire strategy just clicks into place.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to completely change how we're looking at things. We need to step out of the normal world of politics and step into the, well, ruthless logic of power. Power plays by a totally different set of rules, and they are definitely not what you think.
Look at it like this. On one side, you've got democratic logic. It's all about policy, public service, consent of the governed. But on the other side, you have power logic. And this is the world Donald Trump lives in. In that world, there's only one goal: survival. Everything else, public service, policy, it doesn't matter. Institutions, they're just tools for control. Consent, who cares? It's all about leverage. This brings us to a really important idea: probes. You see, all those controversial statements, all those shocking actions, they're not random outbursts, they're not mistakes. They're calculated tests. He's sending out a probe, a little violation, just to see what happens. And every single time a probe goes unanswered, every time it's met with silence, that silence becomes permission to go even further next time.
All right, so that's the theory. But how does this power logic actually play out in the real world? Let's take a look at what this looks like in action.
From this perspective, the entire system is just a collection of props on a stage. Congress, it's not a co-equal branch of government. It's a weapon that you either use or you neutralize. The courts? Yeah, they're a great tool, right up until they rule against you. Then they're the enemy. And this brings us back to the most critical piece of the puzzle.
Elections are no longer about governing. They're not about what you're going to do for the country. They become a shield, a human firewall against accountability. Winning isn't about a mandate, it's about building a political bodyguard so that consequences become completely optional.
But here's the thing. A strategy like this only works if the other side lets it. It needs their cooperation. And that cooperation, well, it usually comes in the form of silence. A strategic silence that has absolutely devastating consequences.
So why the silence? Well, the excuses always sound so pragmatic, don't they? Voters are worried about the cost of living. The polling doesn't look good for a fight. The district maps are just too tough. They all sound so reasonable. And they are all completely fatal.
And this is the real danger. These rationalizations, they make surrender feel intelligent. They make retreat feel like a clever strategy. They let you disguise fear as moderation. But power doesn't respect caution. It doesn't respond to it. It feeds on it.
And that leads us to the most important rule of all. Power vacuums are never empty for long. When you don't enforce the rules, the other side doesn't see it as restraint or wisdom. They see it as an invitation. Your silence is interpreted as weakness, and weakness is just permission to expand.
You know, what's happening isn't chaos. It feels chaotic, but it's not. It's a pattern. What feels like a random downward spiral is actually a very predictable, three-stage process of decay.
First, you get normalization. The things that used to be shocking just become background noise. Then comes internalization. This is when his own supporters start to adopt the logic, seeing attacks on institutions as proof of strength. But the final, most dangerous stage is inevitability. That's when the opposition itself starts to self-censor. They give up. They start believing that any kind of confrontation is pointless.
And see, once you hit that third stage, collapse doesn't even require force anymore. It happens through compliance. The failure to use the tools you have, the tools of accountability, it stops being a neutral act. It's a choice. It's an active decision that enables the whole thing.
So, where does that leave us? Well, it looks like there are three paths forward from here. Path one is just continued normalization. Accountability stays off the table, the violations get worse, and power just quietly consolidates as the whole system bends and adapts around it.
Path 2 is delayed confrontation. Where action is finally taken, but it's way too late. The real damage is already done. At that point, accountability is just a symbolic gesture. It arrives after it's already stopped mattering.
Then there's the third path, enforcement now. And look, this one's messy, it's disruptive, it's absolutely risky, and it would cause a lot of short-term instability. But it's the only path that actually reasserts the rule of law. It's the only one that sends a clear message that consequences are not and will never be optional.
You see, the real choice here isn't between chaos and stability. It's between a controlled confrontation now and an uncontrolled collapse later. So the question we have to ask ourselves isn't, what will Donald Trump do next? The real question is about what's being done or not being done right now. Which of these paths are we already on?